Okay, so I'm going to start the webinar off today to give you a little background. Interest rates were very low, and if you look at the graph on the right side of your screen, you'll kind of see it keeps moving, which is awesome. It's showing you that interest rates were declining. Unemployment was also very, very low. It was like 3.5%, which is extremely low. Home sales, by the way, in 2019 hit 5.3 million. The first quarter of the year, we've experienced probably one of our best years in 34 years. And by that, I mean we sold through just about all our inventory so that the absorption number, the number of days it was taking the market to absorb or sell inventory, was moving very, very quickly and very low. Okay, so that's all the okay, what happened before. Now we're going to talk about where we are today. We're in this, what we call the pandemic period. And in the pandemic period, regardless of what's happening in the world, life events still occur. What we mean by that is people still need to retire. People still have to expand their family. People still go through divorce. People still have marital changes. All these things occur that regardless of what's happening in the market, people still need to buy and sell real estate. The best example I can give you is a property we just settled on Friday at 305 Arden Road in Gulf Mills. And what's interesting about that property, it's a property that had been on the market previously with another company. We listed the home, we sold the home in 12 days at full asking price, and it settled on Friday. Now, the settlement was a lot different than the way we're used to doing them before. And towards the end, Laurie's going to touch on some of those changes that occur in the settlement process. The next thing to look about in the pandemic is shadow inventory and seller's market. So as I said, we were coming out of a seller's market, and shadow inventory means people that were getting ready to sell their property because this is our busiest time of the year, and they've temporarily put their decision on hold. So it's become like shadow inventory. We have a listing right now in inventory where we've done the video, we created the aerial, we did the virtual reality, we did a floor plan, we did the direct mail card, all the things we would do to market the property. We're ready to hit the go button as soon as that seller gives us the okay. So that's the shadow inventory. We think there's a lot of that that's coming. It's just hasn't been released just yet. After the shadow inventory, we talk about buyer demand, and buyer demand is falling, and the reason it's falling is people are going on the sidelines taking a wait and see approach. Then we look at interest rates in the pandemic period. Interest rates are very low. They've been falling lately. Ryan's going to touch on that when he talks about his part of the presentation today, but we're also going to be talking about the Fed fund rate, and that's what banks charge other banks, and that rate is right now at 0%. So we're going to talk to that in a little more detail towards the end of today. Then we're going to talk about unemployment. Unemployment right now, and again, this changes every single day. When I started writing this workshop, it was much lower. The most recent number I got was about 13%. It is projected to go to 20% within a 6-month period of time, and then forecasting that maybe it could go as high as 30%. So that gives you a little bit idea where we are on unemployment. Now we get into the iBuyer space. So that's 10% of all homes sold in last year were iBuyers. iBuyer, in just definition, is called the instant buyer. These are heavily capitalized companies like Redfin, companies like Zillow. And what they basically do is they use artificial intelligence to come up with value of a property, and then they can give the seller an instant cash offer. So again, that's 10% of the market. And by the way, since the pandemic, all these companies have pulled back and stopped the iBuyer process. So that entire market basically has stopped. After the iBuyer, we also looked at Airbnb. The reason we looked at that is because it holds 7 million rental listings. At least that was the quantity when I last checked it. Again, I'm sure if you check today, it's probably significantly down. But in that space, we have a lot of people we know of, just not in this market area, who've invested in homes in the Caribbean or Florida, and they own multiple rentals that are currently empty now, so they're not getting the cash flow. And we think what's going to happen is you're going to see a lot of them come to the market at some point, because a lot of those are single investors and they don't have the pocketbook to be able to withstand, a downturn like this. Now we're going to get into the pandemic period, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about absorption, because that's the gauge of how to tell really what the temperature is of the market. So on the right side of the screen, this is an analysis we run for every single property we sell. And we do that before we do any kind of pricing analysis. And what this shows is, if you look at the summary at the bottom, the result, it says the current market would take 54 days to absorb the 7 homes. So in this, we just came up with an arbitrary township called Your Town. And bedrooms, we picked 4 bedrooms. And we set a price range of $500,000 to $600,000 at the top. And basically, the way that all works, and I'm going to turn on my my laser pointer so you can see, there are 7 active listings, and 47 of them sold in the prior 12 months. So this is a rolling average looking backwards. So that's going to change tomorrow, the next day. My point is, it takes 54 days. That's a really, really low number. And now back to the left side, you see there's 3 kind of categories we look at. We look at seller's market, we look at a neutral market, and we look at a buyer market. We define our seller market as if it takes less than 6 months for the market to absorb the inventory, we're in a seller's market. And by the way, that's exactly where we are right now, except the buyer demand's not there. So this is a very unusual, uncharted territory type of marketplace. The next is the neutral market. Neutral market would be somewhere between like 6 and 8 months. And then finally, our buyer's market, when there's lots more inventory, it's when it hits like 8 months, okay? So that's when the market reverts to a buyer's market. We're not there yet. Then we look at, in the current environment, we're looking at the buy versus rent analysis, because capital is cheap, okay? Interest rates are low. So you might see a rush of people that are paying leases that still have their job, right? Because we still have, if the unemployment is 13% now and goes up, that still there's a huge market of people out there that are in rentals. I have a millennial daughter that's in that category. And if she's listening right now, I hope like hell she's going to buy a home, because these are going to be remarkable times. Interest rates are going to come down, maybe even a lot lower. I mean, we don't know, but it's a strong possibility. And then we look at, if there's an exit of rentals, people get out of rentals, what happens to all these rental communities that have been built in Philadelphia, Newtown Square, King of Prussia, Conshohocken, Westchester, Exton? I think that you're going to see price decline if that happens, if you get that big exit of people coming out of rentals. This graphic, I think, shows it better than any. People might be entering rentals because they're forced to sell their home, right? Because they lost their job. They need to get the equity out of their home, assuming they don't refinance, which we're going to ask Ryan that question a little later. That is an option where someone could pull cash out and get the cash out of their home, but we're assuming maybe they're not in that position to do it, so they might be exiting to go to rentals. So that one is kind of we call it the flip of the coin. This part of the presentation, we're going to focus on some of the wild cards. By wild cards are things that we really don't know yet exactly how the cards are going to be dealt, right? Because it's too soon to tell. Look, we're following other countries and seeing what they're doing, but everyone's doing things differently. So when's the curve going to flatten? That's kind of the first question, right? You turn on the news or watch anything, it's all about the curve. So we don't know that. No one really knows. How long does it take to develop a vaccine? This is one of the most interesting things. I did research yesterday, and again, this is yesterday, not today, so I'm sure it's changed. According to the Wall Street Journal, there were 140 experimental drug treatments and vaccines in development right now, with 11 in clinical trials. Like, that's mind-boggling that there are clinical trials going on right now. Who would think that? And then University of Pittsburgh has something that's like It's like a patch that they develop with sugar and stuff that's super cutting edge that looks very promising. So again, no one knows how long, but that's one of our wild cards. The next wild card is the big city. Take, for example, like New York City. What happens is the pendulum going to swing where people say, I want to leave New York City and go to the suburbs. Well, the last couple weeks, Dave Rantanen, myself, Samantha, you've been getting a lot of the calls. We've fielded a lot of calls from people in New York City, and the call was very unusual. The call was, ready to deliver my baby, and I'm looking for a place to live in the suburbs of Philadelphia, and do you have anything? I'll take it for a year, a month, whatever you can do for me. Now, the flip side is, I read also that the OBGYN practices weren't taking new patients. So that's another challenge to that. But it goes back to the pendulum that you might see that swing where people say, I don't want to live in the big city. There's too many people. It's too easy to transmit things. Let's look at the suburbs. The next wild card is jobs. How many jobs can be done at home? What's going to happen with jobs? That we really don't know about. And then the recession. Does this go beyond a recession? No one really knows, but it's another wild card to think about. And then finally, this last one in the wild card section is unemployment, which, as I said to you, as of yesterday, I saw an article, it was at 13%, which who knows? This is a wonderful graphic. I really like this one. So this is post-pandemic, like what's going on, where do we stand, what could happen, that type of thing. And the first thing is blue chip housing stock. What I mean by that is that the area that we service, and we all cover, Ryan, Laurie, Dave, Samantha, myself, is call it the Philadelphia and the suburban area, the counties of Chester, Montgomery, Delaware, Bucks, Philadelphia. Ryan, I know your footprint is much, much wider. I think, if I'm not correct, I think your company is nationwide, or close to multiple states, just about every state. Okay, he's nodding his head, so I'm assuming that's every state. So what we're fortunate to have here in this marketplace that we're talking about is we don't have the iBuyers here. There are very few iBuyers if they are here. The Airbnbs, not really here, so we're not going to see a lot of that movement. Yes, there could be some maybe in the city or some areas, but not the quantity of like Florida or some other states. The housing stock is basically not homogeneous, so it's very different. So it's not consistently the same across the board like North Carolina, and can fare much, much better. And the school system, the underlying of the strength of an area is the school system. We have schools in these market areas where they're ranked in the top, 5 or 10 in the country. So that's really driving our market. So, it's blue chip, no matter how you look at it. And then you could look at what happened in the last recession, 2000, and the meltdown that started, we were at a peak at maybe 2005, and then by 2007, 8, the market turned down. If you remember areas like Naples, Florida, which is an area I've tracked forever because I've always wanted to have a house in Florida, and the appreciation rates of Naples were going through the roof. And I said something to Lisa, boy, weren't we crazy? We should have bought something. Like, it was going up like 40%, 50%, like crazy numbers after the, right in 2005. And then like in 2007, 8, guess what happened in Naples? It was like a steep like drop down. It just like crashed. Now, the suburban Philadelphia market and the Philadelphia market, blue chip housing stock, guess what? Blue chips move down very, very, very slow. They go up slow, they come down slow. So you're in this blue chip housing stock. It's a huge, huge factor that provides a lot of positive signs for our marketplace. The next area in post-pandemic, and we've seen this from everyone I've been in, I've been doing this for 34 years, and I've seen lots of cycles up and down and everything. Real estate population goes down without question. We're already seeing now, so there's a lot of these salaried models of what we call interrupters in the real estate space, and they're now cutting their agent population because they're carrying salaries and there's no revenue, so they're going to be the first ones to feel it. The next thing that happens in post-pandemic time is the inventory. Remember I said to you about the shadow inventory, and that's all these sellers that are kind of cooped up in their home that are ready to go. They will come on the market, but they're going to wait until we're able to show properties. And also people, excuse me, I'm going back one, people that are stuck in their home right now, that are just like crawling the walls because they don't like their house. They're now spending like significant amount of time in spaces of their house and realizing that this is a bad fit. They are going to be the next category to get out and buy something or sell their home to get a different home. We had a call on Sunday morning at 8:20 from a buyer who sold her property and went to a rental. And she said to me at 8:20 in the a.m., she was on her way to Trader Joe's and said to me, of course, 8:20 a.m., who else is working but me? She said, I've got to buy something, like, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, like that's just, people are just tired of living in that type of house. They want to buy something. The next area, I talked to you a little bit about divorces. You're going to see the divorce rates are going to spike. There's just no question about it. And that's because of, being in the house and sheltering in place, living with your spouse, and economic conditions get tough, and all the factors that are going to cause the divorce market to pick up. And then we have the iBuyer space. I told you that post-pandemic, you're going to see a lot of that be liquidated because these companies have bought and own real estate and they're out of that space and they're going to liquidate. And then you have forced sales. Forced sales are people that get into trouble. They lose their job. They can't afford. So they're going to have to sell, and they're going to have to sell their property and move on. In the post-pandemic, the other area is the interrupters. And these are companies. There's different kinds of interrupters, but they basically came into the real estate space, and what they've tried to do is they try to get the eyeballs of the client, the buyers, before the realtor gets it. And then what they do is they sell it back to the realtor for a profit, right? It's a great model for these companies. And they entered the space at a time when these companies have never been profitable from day one. That's not their motive. They weren't profitable. So now add to the stress and strain that not only were they not profitable when they got started, now the market shifted, and now they had to get out of the iBuyer space. So they tried, they won't make it, and we're going to see a lot of them disappear. There's also real estate companies that are out there, and what they've tried to do is they've come in and they're looking to pay agents like huge signing bonuses to jump ship, to leave, to go to their company. Well, the real estate industry as a whole and the brokerage side of the business is not, it's a very slim margin business. So if you have a slim margin business and you're not profitable, and then you're paying to get people, and then the market shifts down, well, guess what? They're not going to be around much longer, in my opinion, okay? So I've seen this time and time again with every recession we've been, that coming out of it, you're going to see a lot of these companies are going to be, are going to disappear. And the other point about these interrupters is they've tried to alter like what our time-tested methods of being a trusted real estate advisor. That's what they tried to do, something differently that would generate huge returns and benefits in the stock market. But the idea of profitability really never came across, and that wasn't part of their model. then we have something called the virtual real estate. And that's a different whole nother concept of what we're seeing now. And I'm fortunate because in 2016, I started looking at what was happening and started implementing heavily in this space. So we started doing the virtual marketing with like the 3-dimensional home tours and the virtual reality and a lot of other things. And that actually helps us to be equipped to survive and thrive in times like we're in right now. So that's the one, saving grace. And I can tell you that in these times that we're in now, we've innovated more things. I think Samantha, Dave, you can attest that in the last couple weeks, I used to work, I think 24/7. I think we're working 25/8 now because we're innovating and doing things, all the things we wanted to do that we couldn't do. So out of this, I think you're going to see a huge number of new programs and things come out of it, not just with our real estate group, but I think a lot of other people as well. And the one advice I can give to everybody that's on the webinar right now is that experience, relationships, and knowledge matter more now than ever.